In this conversation, I interview Sergej Kotliar, the CEO of Bitrefill. Bitrefill allows you to purchase gift cards using cryptocurrency. They have an integration with the Lightning Network, focus on Bitcoin. They started off by offering mobile top-ups. Sergej is a eclectic character. We had an awesome conversation. We started off by talking about his business, his background, how he got into it. I personally had a semi-competitive business for 3 years. So it was fascinating to talk about the industry. At Redeem, where I was working, we allowed people to trade Bitcoins in the marketplace for gift cards, and he buys them directly from retailers and gift card companies and then resells them. So we talked about the gift card market, how it all works, how the money flow happens. Apparently, Bitrefill and gift card purchases are the top way that people spend cryptocurrency. We then talked about El Salvador, the impacts that countries have by adopting cryptocurrency. And we talked about the Ukraine-Russia situation, the fiscal policies involved there, and long-term views on that situation. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Sergej, CEO of Bitrefill. All right, Sergej, here we are. I love what you're working on. We have a lot of shared background, crypto, Bitcoin, gift cards, where they are together. Bitrefill is a project that you've been working on for a long time. Give me the high-level description of what Bitrefill is and maybe how you got into it. I'd be curious to hear what your story is on how you got into the game.
Sure. I mean, but that's two big stories. Sure. High level, what Bitrefill is that if you want to buy something with cryptocurrency in the real world, Bitrefill is the best and the most popular place to do so. Our bread and butter product is gift cards. So you go on the site and you get a gift card for Uber or Hotels.com or whatever it is that you want. We have gift cards in over 100 countries, and it's a super streamlined experience. You don't even need to register an account or anything. You just go on the site, click, and you're on your way shopping. We recently launched bill payments in the US as well, which is a cool new thing that not so many have yet. And there you'll be able to pay your credit card bills, your mortgage, your social security, your insurances, whatever it is. So that's what we do. We're trying to build a world in which it's no less strange to open your Bitcoin or crypto wallet than it is to having conversations over video or all of the other things that we do every day that seemed strange and foreign and futuristic some years back. The circular economy of cryptocurrency.
Totally.
My backstory. Some companies tend to say it's a little bit like with children. Some of them are planned, some of them just happen, right? And I think companies are like that as well. Some companies are carefully planned with a business plan and so on. Bitrefill is the kind that just happened a little bit. It started as a very small experiment. I've been reading a lot of stuff about how, if you work in the and then it was just the Bitcoin space, you're going to get hacked and you're going to get robbed and this and that and all of these bad things. And I was like I always, I think from the early days, paid a lot of attention to the sort of the unsexy opinion leaders, the dirty ones that say they use bad words and that have controversial views and so on. And so the first version of Bitrefill was a service where you could buy phone top-ups. So for prepaid phones, and you can go on the site and you could and can still get a phone balance to your phone in over 100 countries. That was a very small experiment, really, to hey, what can we do with this Bitcoin thing? Well, maybe we sell something. What can we sell? Well, something that doesn't require shipping because I'm lazy.
So were you just exploring ideas like as a hacker part time from your side job, and wanted to get into crypto more and this is what you thought of, or was there some
something like that.
interest?
I was sort of I'd had a previous startup that had two, and then the most recent one had failed, which was a very not fun experience. And I was sort of getting by, doing consulting gigs here and there, and wanted to catch up on programming and learn Node.js, and so I built what was the first version of Bitrefill, and then managed to get us into an accelerator with Boost, and got a little bit of funding, and then sort of it became gradually into a company. And from there, we've mostly, I think, followed our customers and their feedback and so on, and trying to always stay close to the users and stay close to what they actually use and need, and try to do something where we provide value, and ideally when people are willing to pay for it, that's always a good sign. And I think those things are still around in the company. We still spend a tremendous amount of time trying to understand our users and the general crypto audience. And I mean, it is a strange world, right? And it's crazy that all of these years in, it's still like trying to understand it is a big motivational factor, I think, for me and for a lot of people on the team.
Yeah. And so how much have you raised so far with Bitrefill?
We've raised less than $10 million lifetime.
And was the mobile refill product the big product that you raised on, or was it really you saw traction on the? And for the gift cards, I assume. Tell me, is the model that you're going to retailers, or you're going to like those gift card networks that are the names are escaping me, and you're buying them in bulk, and then you're getting a discount 5-7%, something like that, and then sell them that way?
Yes. You were mentioning about Redeem and the peer-to-peer model. We work with the networks, the gift card wholesalers. Basically, if you go into a Walgreens in the US and there's a gift card rack, then that rack is provided to the store by a company, and they in turn deal with all of the gift cards and all of the merchants and all of that, and they provide all of that, right? And we do the same, the exact same. It's literally the same companies. It's just that we don't ship any pieces of plastic. It's just digital. Like you said, the way that it works in gift cards is that when you buy $100 gift card in the store, you pay $100, you get $100 worth of gift card. You feel like this didn't cost me anything, but the store actually pays less to the merchants, and that's their discount, and that's what we live off of. So we're able to generate revenue, but customers perceive us as being no extra fees, and even a little bit of rewards and stuff like that.
Do you sell it for a discount, or is it just at cost?
We sell things at face value. We have rewards, and rewards you can use at your next purchase. Depending if you want to call that a discount or not.
I should say face value. That's a better way to say it. And it is the way my understanding is that when a retailer will sell a gift card, either through a network or directly, that the big space, the margin that the retailers realize is the loss. So maybe you know this stat, I forget what it is, but there's like only 90% or some percentage of gift cards that are purchased are actually used. What do you remember what that is, or do you know what that number is?
Yeah, it's called breakage. I mean, it varies a lot depending on what kind of gift card it is and what kind of merchant. I mean, I have a gift card here for a wine tasting experience that very well might become breakage at some point. Whereas another thing that you might use right away is less likely, and then there's still. Like our customers, like breakage is relatively low because you buy something when you're ready to shop. But there still is some. But it's not the whole story, really. It's not just about the breakage. From the merchant side, gift cards is, you sell $100 gift card, but the customer will buy usually not exactly $100.00 worth of stuff. So either it buys a little bit less, and then you keep the difference, or it buys something more, and then it's a revenue driver, and so on. So there's a lot of these different dynamics that make gift cards a very good deal for the merchants. And I guess what we've discovered, and I think at this point it's market wisdom, is that it's the best model for enabling people to do commerce in the real world with cryptocurrencies. I mean, like all stats indicate that like 60-something% of what people buy with cryptocurrency is a gift card. And
wow,
we're the largest player in that segment.
Interesting.
That I know of.
Yeah.
The peer-to-peer segment, I don't really include. It's a bit special. It has kind of its own thing and its own dynamics.
Yeah. Just as context too, you mentioned it, but I ran a company for people listening for 3 years called Redeem with 3es.com. And we ended up selling the company, but we were focused on allowing more peer-to-peer transactions. So people who bought gift cards, who didn't have access to bank accounts and wanted to get into crypto, could trade with people who had Bitcoin and wanted access to discounted gift cards. And we effectively built a marketplace to emphasize the fidelity of the cards and have support teams and allow people to make those trades, which in the US, at least, people don't appreciate the accessibility to the banking network and the security of that banking network and access to the crypto network that people in the US that are banked enjoy, especially for other parts of the world that just don't have that. Either it's illegal or it just hasn't been created yet, or it's just not accessible to people due to the remote areas or whatever it is. So yeah, it's a fascinating market because you don't really know many times where it goes. Like you're offering the gift card, people use it, especially when it's international. Where do you see the majority, or what's the breakdown of countries, customers by countries, both on the buy and I guess you're only on the buy side. You don't have a sell side, but on the buy side.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, if you count, so we have gift cards in over 100 countries. So and the amounts vary, right? So if you imagine an American customer and then maybe an Indian customer, the American one will generate a lot more volume as a rule of thumb, or on average. So if you count human heads, then we actually have quite a lot in emerging markets. If we count in dollars, then the bulk of it is in Western countries, the US, Western Europe, places like that. But we have it's a very long tail distribution of countries and use case scenarios and different peculiarities to different countries, and both in terms of crypto and in terms of e-commerce and what people want to buy and so on. So yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, it's different.
What are some of the things that you've learned that have been most surprising to you through this journey?
Ooh. Well, I've learned. I mean, the biggest thing is that people that use cryptocurrency are very different from people who talk about cryptocurrency. Right. If you pull over, if you go to say you sneak into a speaker's dinner at a prominent conference and just grab a guy and you're like, hey, which wallet do you use and when did you last open it to make a transaction? And they're going to be like, if they have a wallet, they're like, yeah, well, I don't know, I bought maybe at a conference they'll say I bought a T-shirt with Bitcoin, but like real non-gimmicky things. A lot of them, some do, but many don't, right? And so I think that's a big realization that I've been talking about a lot lately, is that you need to understand that I mean, like Bitcoin, but also whatever crypto is a movement, right? It's also a tool, and a naive understanding is that people who are in the movement also use the tool, and vice versa. But actually, they are very disjointed. There is an overlap, but it's much smaller than people think. Right. And I mean, when you start to think about it, it kind of makes sense, because you can definitely be passionate about Bitcoin and be on Twitter and go to conferences and all of that, and be a good Bitcoiner. But hey, I get my paycheck at regular money, and I have no interest in buying stuff with my Bitcoin. I keep it in a ultra secure multi-sig cold storage, whatever, and I don't even have access to it. Right, and then there's people who use it as a tool, which I mean, and you can just think of any tool that you use. You wouldn't, like, I don't know. Let's say, what's an example? Let's go to. I always bring a BitTorrent. Like, I can use BitTorrent if I need to download some legal Linux distribution or something like that. But I wouldn't go to a conference about it. I wouldn't go on Twitter to argue with people that use a different client than me about technical merits, right? I will type in, BitTorrent client in Google, and I will get the one that works for my computer. And when I'm done, I'm done. And that's the attitude that people have to a tool, right? Versus the movement, the caring, the passion, and all of this, and the community, and the friends that you make, and all of that stuff. Right? And both of these things are great, but I think a lot of people assume that there's a perfect overlap of these two groups, and it's not. It exists, but it's small. And I think that for me, I think. I mean, obviously, I'm a member of the community and the movement. This is what motivates me and why I'm here, and everybody at the company as well. But one of the things that we sort of want to see in the world is what I think is to realize the Bitcoin dream, which is a world in which, people pay each other in Bitcoin and use it every day, and it's not a strange thing or unusual or anything like that. And so for that to happen, people need to start using it as a tool. And the easiest way to do that is to find people that already use it as a tool and then build something that appeals to them. But that's hard, right? Because if they're not on Twitter, then how do you reach them, and so on? And they're not going to go to conferences, they're not going to listen to this podcast, and so on. So yeah, I think that's a big realization that I've had. I mean, there's so many.
Yeah. So it sounds like you made kind of 2 points there. One is that there's two large customer groups: people who are using Bitcoin, people who talk about it, and then two, the objective that you have through Bitrefill is to attract people into more utilization of specifically Bitcoin as cash, something that they think of as a tender to trade with, not by analogy to gold, where gold being more of a store of value and something I wouldn't buy a candy bar with. Bitcoin often to me seems as a specific currency to get lost in translation between these two value propositions. Do you see the Lightning Network specifically? I know you spent a lot of time researching and building on it. Do you see the Lightning networks being specifically applicable to the cash transaction aspect of Bitcoin? Meanwhile, Bitcoin itself would be more of store of value in the long term, analogous to gold?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, at the same time, like most people who buy something with Bitcoin on Bitrefill, they will not use Lightning, they will use an on-chain payment. Yeah, right. So it's still the case that Lightning is a niche, even within the Bitcoin group. And we can discuss why that is and so on, but I think it relates to these things, right? That because Lightning as well, like you will have people that, have a Lightning emoji in their Twitter handle, or they are enthusiastic about Lightning and they want to see it. They truly deeply want it to succeed, they just don't need to use it themselves, right? And or don't want or whatever, and that's fine, right? But it's always important to, that is what product market fit is, right? You need to find who are the people who want to, who is the market that will buy the product that you're offering. And that is based on the tool, not on the movement. The movement has other things that have product market fit, right? Conferences, books, things like that, that people in the movement want, that help them in participating in the movement, let's say.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And Bitcoin really has seemingly two value propositions that make it difficult to have it be a cash transaction. One is the latency on making an actual transaction. It might take minutes, whereas a credit card transaction is a couple seconds. And then it is expensive relative to a credit card transaction, or obviously a cash transaction, which would have no cost to transact in person. Lightning Network is designed to solve this and allow people to make fast and cheap transactions. Is there a structural challenge with Lightning that you think is preventing or somehow slowing adoption?
I think it's marketing related. That's my personal opinion, is that, I mean, you've been around for a while as well, and you know the history and the block size war and how Lightning was promoted in that, and then it sort of became this maximalistic thing and so on, and then that limits it to again, to the intersection, right, of the people who are in the movement and also want to use it as a tool, right, which is a small group, because there's many people in the movement that don't want to use it as a tool, and there's also a lot of people that want to use it as a tool that are not in the movement, and then it's hard to reach them, and so on. And so I think that, yeah, these are the things that need to be figured out, but this is hard. It's hard stuff, figuring out product market fit. And I actually think that, I mean, if you've watched Bitrefill over the past 6 months, like, we've launched a new brand and been doing a lot of like stunt marketing type things, because I think that we need to make it exciting, to use Bitcoin. We need to make it a lifestyle brand, that, hey, I'm the kind of person that, right? Same as with whatever. I'm the kind of person that has an iPhone. I'm the kind of person that wears Levi's jeans and not H&M jeans, or whatever it may be, right? It becomes a statement. And so I think that we need to make it cool, and we need to make it cool not just within the context of the community, right? Not just that the people that like the t-shirts with the orange prints on them, but make it legit cool, like something that people can
get behind. Why do you think that is? I mean, part of me feels like there's a implicit waving of the flag of defeat there when I hear you say that Bitcoin in and of itself is not a strong enough value proposition, that we kind of need some window dressing there. We need to like spice it up, that behind the scenes, the product is like not compelling. I mean, I would think if this solves a real problem in some variety of ways for people across the world, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it's functionally useful and the UI that I'm using is simple enough to use, once I get it, I trust it, I get into a routine, it's like on to the races. And I don't need people to do stunt guerrilla marketing to make me feel cool, because ultimately the people using it aren't going to be talking about it anyways. It's not like a t-shirt I'm wearing. Right. I'm also curious what start marketing you've done.
Well, I mean, I think that something like Bitcoin is, especially in the transactional scenario, there needs to be, many sides, right? I mean, somebody who is looking to spend their Bitcoin needs some way to get their Bitcoin. and vice versa, because nobody wants to get Bitcoin if they can't spend it later, right? So there's a bit of a chicken and egg in there that is tricky, but also that there is, in the chicken and egg world. I mean, we are a provider of egg, let's say, but you also need to reach out so that people know that, hey, there's egg there, and if I get chicken, then I can do the egg later.
Then you get the magic.
So on. And so there's definitely a certain virality, and there's certain audiences that find the value proposition and so on. But you also need to, say that you're in Nigeria and you're an IT worker, and you realize that you can get paid in Bitcoin. Oh, that's great, and especially if you can buy stuff with it, and you can just get a 30% increase of your salary just by using this thing. That's great. Yeah, but then we need to communicate to those people before, right? And then there's a lag that sits in the back of their head, and then later when I actually found the job, they will pay me in Bitcoin. Okay, and so there are these delays because of the chicken and egg factor that makes it challenging, I think. But these are just my theses.
Yeah. What other things do you think are we talked a little bit pre-show about contrarian ideas. I'd love to hear what stands out to you in your mind as things that you feel are contrarian to you. Are there specific, when you think of this question, do you think of crypto and monetary policy? Do you think of, what comes to mind when you think of areas you think maybe society is most off base, or things that you feel strongly about?
Well, I mean, the society stuff is easy, right? I mean, just go on Twitter and you'll find all of the things, and I would probably agree with most of it. I don't think I can add much there. I think it's more interesting to be contrarian within the space. And we've learned a lot of things that are contrarian. Like if you look at, for example, which wallets people use to shop on Bitrefill, the top, most of them at least, 70-80% of the wallets are multi-coin wallets, right? Which is very not in line with what the Bitcoin maximalist crowd thinks. And I mean, I think ideologically in that direction as well as a company, and so on. And so it's surprising, right? And probably like some of our maximalism shines through in some of the things, but it does make sense in a lot of ways, because again, if you think about people that use it as a tool, then they're going to use whatever tool is the most convenient, right?
Well, yeah. Why is that surprising to me? Maybe I haven't picked up on the narrative of the alternative. What's the alternative to multi-currency wallets? I mean, I would imagine you're referring
Bitcoin only
to
wallets, let's say.
Okay. This would be like BitPay or some. Are there examples of things?
Yeah, well, the blue wallet, your green wallet, there's a bunch of them. Most Lightning wallets are only Bitcoin, and so on. And that's also part of the thing, right? I mean, if you have the 5 different cryptocurrencies in your wallet, and then this Lightning thing requires you to use a separate wallet, well, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah. I don't see why. What would be is there some security advantage of having a Bitcoin only wallet?
Well, the proponents would argue that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's less risk exposure by building lots of features. There's high probability of some security thing and so on. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just that there's a lot of scams in cryptocurrency, and history of it is full of scams. It's mostly scams. So
yeah,
if you say that it's all scams, you're gonna be right a lot.
Yeah. Have you guys been I mean, have you guys learned anything from a hack you've experienced, or had any negative impact due to hackers, scammers, that kind of thing?
I mean, scammers, we get our fair share. I think we do all right. Hacks, like the hacks that we've had, well, I guess so far, knock on wood, but we've only had like someone abused some obscure edge case in the refund code or something like that, so on. So we haven't been like proper hacked and so on. I mean, we also don't keep bitcoins in hot wallets and stuff like that. So there isn't that much to hack really with Bitrefill either. Plus, I mean, frankly, if you're a hacker, there's a lot juicier targets than Bitrefill.
Yeah.
Where you,
because you guys are probably simple. I'm sure you have a receiving Bitcoin wallet and you receive it, and you probably move it into exchange and move it into whatever fiat you need, or keep it in some cold storage wallet, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's all kind of offline and separated from the servers and so on. So it's like it's hard to get to those.
Yeah, we got crushed by a few hacks. We had one where we lost like half the money in our Bitcoin. I mean, we were self-funded, so we'd have like 50K in there for daily transactions, and we had one where we lost like 75%, which was a blowing amount. And then I shouldn't say it's ever simple, but in hindsight, you look at it and you're like, oh, that was a dumb mistake. We should have structured it differently. We had a open URL where we shouldn't have had an open URL, or, fell victim to some relatively simple, non-technical exploit. Yeah, a lot of learnings.
Security is often like that, right? The weakest point is the humans and the simple stuff. And
we totally are. We absolutely are. Yeah. Yeah, I interviewed a security expert a few days ago, and that was his underscore. That was his point, was like 80% of it is people. He's like, even in his company, he talked about one of the engineers, or there's another interview, one of the engineers fell victim to, somebody messaging him, pretending to be on the team, and, blah, 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 and convince them to do something. And they end up losing millions. It was like, it's wild.
No, but we do that, like whenever we get a phishing email, we post it in the team chat, and we rank it with emojis. Some of them are very. I think my favorite one was came to everyone in the company from our CFO, apparently, or made to appear like that, and then it was like. Team salary document, and it looked like a Google spreadsheet. So it's very like, you want to click that.
Yeah. And that would typically would that go to? Would go to some page that's install some bug in your computer, or like a virus?
I don't know. I guess something that I don't know. I mean, there's browser exploits as well. So if you're unlucky and you have an old browser or whatever, can get your computer taken over.
Yeah, better not to do it. I'm curious. What we have a note here on the show notes for El Salvador. What's up with El Salvador? I know they are the first country, I believe, to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender in that country. Do you have a particular connection, or through Bitrefill, have you guys done anything in conjunction or partnership with El Salvador?
Yeah, we're doing a big effort in El Salvador. We almost right off the bat decided that, hey, it's never going to get easier than this. It's a small country. It's a friendly government. There's no other dominant digital ways of paying each other. Let's see if we can make it work. And so we went down there, almost the whole team, and we've been there. I've been there twice, and now we have 3 people on the ground working there. We launched our bill payment service there. That was the first country that we did that in, and then we kind of used those learnings to streamline our US focused bill pay service. And yeah, I mean, we're still trying to figure it out, but we are already the number one thing that people buy with cryptocurrency in El Salvador is Bitrefill. But we're still figuring it out, because now we've gotten to the point where, we picked off the low-hanging fruit, the people that are already using Bitcoin or have income in Bitcoin and so on. They know us, they use us. But okay, now the challenges are the really interesting ones. Okay, how do we get people that have no idea about Bitcoin, or how do we get some of the common people, and what are the things that they want, and how do we reach them with messaging? Because again, they're not going to go to Bitcoin Beach or to conferences or hang out on Twitter or any of that. And that's where we are right now. We're the hope is that if we crack it, then no matter what we do, even if we don't, it will still provide very valuable insights in terms of like how to market this sort of thing to a broad audience.
And what specifically is working? So you got 3 people there. Are they putting flyers on cars? Are they going to businesses one by one?
Not so much yet. I mean, so far it's been like setting up the bill pay service, a couple of other partnerships with things that you can buy on Bitrefill, presence locally, starting from the Bitcoin hotspots and then moving outwards from there. We've done a little bit of the flyer thing, and probably going to do more. A lot of it is learning. I think a big part of marketing that people forget is not just the outwards facing, but the inwards communication, and understanding what the different challenges are, and trying to figure out a way to solve them if that's possible. And then once you have that, figure out how to communicate that.
Right. So in El Salvador, they're roughly, when did they announce that? About a little over a year ago?
About a year ago.
Sorry. And how is it going? What have you learned?
That it's hard.
People are.
It's harder than anyone thinks, and even if the government is well-meaning with regards to Bitcoin, it's not enough. And because again, most people, just because the government says something, doesn't mean that they're going to do that. Totally. Sometimes it can even be counterproductive if you don't particularly trust your government, which is common in that part of the world. So it's still challenging, and hey, governments are not entrepreneurs, so I don't think we should expect governments to fix these things that us startuppers have been working on for years and years, and they just show up. And a government is a government, and I think that the best thing that a government can do is to enable things from a regulatory standpoint, and then try to get out of people's way. And if you can sweep the ground ahead of someone, then that's great. But if you can't, then probably it's best to sort of just try to create an environment for entrepreneurship, and let those who do that do those things.
Do you have a sense for whether people in El Salvador understand the concept of Bitcoin completely, namely specifically the idea of a trustless currency? And if that's so, largely they still don't. They think somehow this is part of the government. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something the government created and thrust upon us, and it's this strange thing. We're building this trustless thing, right? So we always talk about trustless, but in reality, there is a lot of trust. You need to trust that the wallet that you're using is legit and that it's not going to get hacked. You need to trust in if you're not sophisticated enough to review open source software, then you need to trust in the other people that did.
It's true.
Right? And so there's a lot of trust. And I think if you think back on the time when you were early in the space, and all of us, there is a process, right, of warming up to something. There's also, I guess, the first time that you pay somebody in cryptocurrency, they're going to be like, hey, should I spell out the address over the phone, and maybe you can send a small transaction first, and then which exchange rate are we going to use? Can we agree on this website, and then we do 1, 2, 3 send, right? Like all of these things, because it's new and unusual. And it is, lawless in that sense. So if you fuck something up, there's no recourse. And so trust takes a bit of time to develop, right? And you need to, I think, be involved with your hands, like touch it, use it. And once you've done that a couple of times, you're like, okay, I get the gist of it. And like, where do I keep my 12-word poem, and all of these things? But I mean, I think Salvador is even deeper than that, right? I mean, the majority of society is unbanked. So the understanding of money is that money is made of paper, and it's green. They use American dollars, and that is the definition of money. And so, like, being able to trust that money is a number in an app, even if that number isn't weird decimals of something, even if the number is just dollars in an app, that's a lot. And I think that it's easy to forget when you're living in a cashless society what it was like in the early days. Early days of e-commerce, people were afraid of typing in their credit card number into this website thing. And there was a lot of scams, a lot of problems, security issues, this and that. Right. So, I mean, some of these things take time, and what we're trying to achieve is society level behavioral change, and that doesn't come easy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff, and Bitcoin involves like all of these things, right? It's okay. You need to trust money in an app that has some silly name and made by some startup somewhere. Do I trust that? I don't know. And there's these nerds, and they're loud on Twitter. Okay, and the president says this is good, but I don't know. All of that stuff. It's a lot.
And frankly, if you have cash in your hand and you're comparing it to that, and your primary concern is the security of that currency, it's hard to beat that. I mean, Bitcoin is not going to be faster, it's not going to be cheaper, and it's not going to be more secure if your primary method of transactions are cash.
It can be faster. You have to keep in mind that for a lot of things, like if you look at the time for like a regular person, how long they spend queuing for things.
Oh, okay.
Like, hey,
ATMs.
pay your bills. If you want to pay your bills in El Salvador, you don't have a bank account. You need. It's a process that involves pants, right? You need to put your pants on, maybe your hat, your briefcase, and you go to the special place. Hopefully, it's near to where you live, but maybe it isn't. So maybe you need to get your car or your bicycle or whatever. You need to go there. You need to queue after the other people that are also queuing there.
Right.
It takes time, right? So there's a lot of convenience in being able to do that yourself. But then that leads to the other question, which is, okay, sure, but where do I get Bitcoin in the first place? Actually, you need to go to a special place. You need to queue in front of an ATM, blah, blah, right? So there's, again, all of these chicken and egg dynamics. Or if you're like, but there's remittances. Okay, there's 100 problems with that as well. But if you go, somebody receives a remittance in Bitcoin, or if they got the free Bitcoin from the government, what do you do with it? You cash it out to cash right away. So then you go to the thing, you go to the ATM, you queue up, and so on. And that's kind of like, it's in a lot of ways, it's symbolic of where, even in the Western world, where crypto is, in that it's, we talk so much about living bankless and cut the cord, fuck the banks, all of that. But we're also like, hey, can I get a bank account? And hey, here's my KYC information so I can sign up to the website, and so on, right? And so you'll have, it doesn't matter if you're talking to a Bitcoin maxi or like a DeFi yield degen. It's still going to be that whatever cryptocurrency is to them, it's still usually you go through a bank, to a centralized financial institution. Then you get your crypto, you do whatever crypto things that you want to do. Then you go to another financial institution, and then out to a bank, right? And so in a lot of ways, it's in this bizarre world where it's a bit like, imagine we invented email today with all of the tech that we have, and people would send emails by like writing them on a piece of paper, photographing that paper with their iPhone camera, sending it to someone who prints it on paper, reads it from the paper. It's like there's benefits, but a lot of the benefits are lost compared to being able to live in the digital layer. But in order to be able to live in the digital layer, there's a lot of these chicken and egg effects that need to be overcome, and it's not trivial.
Yeah, I've heard Bitcoin described as a countermeasure, a protective mechanism for political instability. And so the more people are buying into crypto, the more it's effectively a prediction for political uncertainty. And I think I heard a stat somewhere recently that Ukraine, like 50% of the value accrued by people in Ukraine and Ukraine's government is in Bitcoin. I don't know. I'd have to fact check that, but I heard that loosely. Either way, conceptually, it wouldn't surprise me. I think people in Taiwan, if you live in a country that is in the higher end of the spectrum of political uncertainty, it would make more sense to have Bitcoin. I guess, would you agree?
But that's only a concern for your savings, right? You don't concern yourself with political uncertainty if your buddy pays you back $10 from lunch. And you're going to go and buy Snickers in the grocery store, then the political uncertainty and the general security aspects are less important in that scenario, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that are like important to understand. I think we are much better with that case, with the investment, political uncertainty, and so on. But I also firmly believe that that case is also completely useless if there is no way to use that money as money.
What would be an example if you're saying how in a scenario where you couldn't use Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, if the only way to use Bitcoin is to always use a bank and a financial institution that handles Bitcoin, then it's trivial to turn off, right? I mean, Mr. Biden wakes up on the wrong side of the bed one day and he decides no more Bitcoin. Okay, what does Bitcoin in the US look like? Then there's going to be people are like, okay, maybe I should get a wallet. How do I buy Bitcoin without going through a bank and all of that stuff, right? So yeah, like it's. I think that if we're really building a better type of money, if we truly are doing that, then we can't rely entirely on the incumbents. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Yeah. All of these Bitcoin companies that are like, with the left hand, fuck the banks, and with the right hand, please give us a bank account.
Yeah.
Like, it's contradictory. And then, like, what do you expect? Do you expect that you go on a podcast saying fuck the banks, and then the next day you put on your nice shirt and you go to the bank and they're going to be like, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's something that we need to be mindful of. If we're building, I mean, imagine if the internet was dependent on the postal service. Yeah, right. Again, like they wouldn't have taken off. Like we're building our own thing here, right, from the bottom up. Okay, that's great. But then, can we really build it bottom up, or do we actually need to rely on the old world? And if we always have to rely on the old world, well, then
Well, I think there's multiple things to tease out here. One is, the transition process, so like the adoption phase, which you unquestionably have to move liquidity from the traditional financial system into the new system. And so people have money in their bank that literally has to go from there into the cryptocurrency world. So that most likely would be, in the simplest form, an exchange that's integrated into the banks. Alternatively, there might be ways to route that. You withdraw your money into cash and then that move from cash into Bitcoin, but somehow it's moving from your bank into cryptocurrency. Then I think there's also the question of how does it look long term, and what is the long term horizon resistance from governments. And my general thesis is that governments will resist it in the long run when they view the mass scale adoption, particularly of employers, to distribute salaries in currencies. I think that's the underappreciated aspect to the whole circulatory financial system, because when money is, if you have the option to get paid out in Bitcoin, well, now we can completely ignore the dollar. You can get paid in Bitcoin, you could spend it at merchants in Bitcoin, you could pay rent in Bitcoin, you could accept it. And now it's like, oh, remember that dollar? We're kind of, people are forgetting about it. And that's where I think when governments, in particular the United States, as it sets the monetary policy for the world, has adopted crypto largely because it's come so quickly. And I think the overall adoption has been so largely positive. And also, I think the other massive psychological influence was the positive effect of trailing fiscal policies or regulatory policies for the internet. The one thing the United States got right on regulatory policy when Bill Clinton was in office was, let's not regulate the internet before the internet is built. Let's let that shit just run, let it be built, and then we'll trail that. And that worked tremendously well. That policy, I think that because it's been relatively recent, like 20, 25 years ago, people are carrying that same philosophy around crypto. I think the rub is when, like I just mentioned on the employers, when they start pushing out salary in Bitcoin, if you could pay taxes in Bitcoin, that would be effectively checkmate, because you wouldn't need it. But then how does what is the government just soft land?
You can pay some taxes with Bitrefill, like municipal taxes and whatnot.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In the US? And is that, so this is through your bill pay system where I send Bitrefill $100 in Bitcoin and then you mail out a check or send a wire transfer, ACH, in the banking system?
Yeah, something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that's still a bridge.
Of course, we're also a bridge to the fiat world. Let's be honest about that. No, we're just a little bit less reliant, or at least we enable our customers to be less reliant on the banking infrastructure. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, another big thing is obviously on a typical government's ability to print money. I mean, the most recent thing I heard about Ukraine is that they banned buying Bitcoin with Ukrainian hryvnias.
See, why would they do that? That's surprising to me. What's the philosophy?
Because they don't want people to sell their hryvnias for Bitcoin, which would devaluate it, and they need the fiat currency in order to print new, so they can buy tanks, so they can defeat the invaders. And which I think, I disagree with that particular decision, but it is a sensible decision. I think it's not like the usual Bitcoin bans in countries that are usually just dumb. This is thought through and from an attitude where they understand it.
Do you think
it's no coincidence that El Salvador, that was the first country to adopt Bitcoin, doesn't have its own currency, right? So they already are in the position where they can't print money, so they have much less to lose in that regard in using Bitcoin, because they're using US dollars anyway, and the Americans are printing dollars, and that benefits the Americans, but it doesn't benefit Salvadorans.
That's very true.
So,
do you think that the decision by the Ukraine government to ban the trading of Ukraine? What is?
They only banned it one way, by the way. they only banned buying Bitcoin. They didn't buy selling Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
Ban selling Bitcoin.
And what part of that do you
still sell Bitcoin? Money can come in. It just can't go out.
Right. What part of that do you disagree? Because from my perspective, I can see this tragedy of the commons where everyone individually is incentivized to do what's best for them. And that what's best for them may be to stay and fight for the country, considering their options, or it may be to leave. It may be to move their money into Bitcoin, or it may be to keep it. I can see a scenario where everyone wants to move into Bitcoin because it's almost like a tragedy of the commons is where you do what's best for you, but then collectively, when everyone does that, it's worse for everyone. What do you think should happen there?
I mean, I'm a liberty-minded person. I think all of us in the space are, and so I tend to lean on the side of individual liberties. But you do need to be sober about the other fact. The other side has arguments as well, and so, but yeah, absolutely. Like I guess that's a contrarian view. Like the Ukraine war has helped me understand one of the benefits of nation states and everything that comes with that. Right? I mean, the functionality of a nation, primary feature of a nation state is to protect people from other people that make nation states, and that's a pretty strong selling point. Also security-minded, and it's one that gets forgotten, right? In peacetime, where we focus on other issues. We have to treat everybody equally and be nice to each other, and all of these things, and individual liberties are important, this and that. But then there's also like, hey, shit, they're showing up in our country and killing us. Okay. It's one of these things. And I think that probably, okay, here's a controversial opinion. I mean, a country that has a fiat currency, if they decide to abolish that and move to Bitcoin entirely, they are at a disadvantage and at a risk of being invaded by another country that can print money and then has a lot more resources. So I think that if we want to get Bitcoin adopted in the world, and by enhancing individual liberties as opposed to the state's rights and abilities, then it's a good thing if we do it evenly across the world. It's not just hollowing out one state. It doesn't get us to a better world. But I think that the world where individuals have a lot more freedom, generally, globally, that does get us there.
Do you feel that when individuals have the freedom to choose their own currency, that there can be a disadvantage with that? Like when you said earlier that when governments have the ability to print money, they have more resources. Effectively, they don't have more resources, but they have more representative currency, which leads to inflation when they print more and more money. Maybe that's a lagging factor. Inflation is lagging, so that if they needed to buy 50 tanks for a couple billion, they print that money, buy the tanks. Inflation comes later. There's a short-term gain, probably a long-term loss on inflation. Do you feel like?
Sometimes you have to take the short-term gain,
totally,
right?
Yeah.
Or else you'll all be dead. I mean, we should also review the fact that the world was on the gold standard not that long ago. Right. So we had sound money as a thing in the world, and what happened was a fiat outcompeted it. On an open market of nations. And if you look at how the gold standard was abandoned in favor of fiat, or like in the direction of fiat, or it was, in the Roman days, they diluted the coins and the silver and all of that. Like that often happens under extreme pressure, such as, for example, war. Where, okay, we got to do something. Okay, let's make up some money out of thin air and we'll figure it out later. And that does work in the sense of that it helps you win the war. So
Yeah.
it's
How much of this Ukraine
it's
Russia
something to be aware of.
I totally agree with you. I know that when the U.S. Unpegged the dollar from the gold standard, it was largely because the U.S. didn't have the gold backing to meet the representative value of what the tender was worth in
Right.
gold.
And probably they had already started printing dollars a bit before that.
Yeah. One thing I think that's underappreciated or under talked about in the mainstream news on the Ukraine-Russia war is any influence of a monetary policy. I think, I mean, tell me if you disagree, but what I'm sensing is like mainstream incentives on Russia is inheriting this legacy of the Soviet Union and the idea of Ukraine being part of Russia. And so in their mind, they're taking back what's rightfully part of this union. And Ukraine obviously wants to remain independent. What doesn't get talked about is any influence of monetary policy or any financial gain from doing this. I think in the West, many people in many countries, I don't know if this is pervasive where you are, but at least in the US, there's just a lot of confusion. People ask, why is Russia doing this? Everything was cool. Ukraine wasn't causing any trouble. Why now? What's motivating it? And there's just so much confusion that I think it's unmotivating to get involved. And largely the U.S. has taken a back seat as far as what they could do. I don't know. Have you been able to make more sense of what's going on in this situation and how it could possibly be resolved?
It's tough.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I think you have to understand that Russia is not like America, but they speak a different language. And I think that in peacetime, it's easy to assume that to be the case. There's been an ongoing war for 8 years, and it's not even the first one where Russia has done this sort of thing. There is definitely parts in the Russian culture that thinks of itself as an empire, as a great nation. There is stuff in the Russian culture that is that at the same time feels like they're being mistreated, unfairly treated. Right, like in sports, it's always like, hey, they're only doping testing our guys. They're not doping testing the other ones. Why are our athletes the only ones getting caught? Right, there's all of these things that like, and this is old stuff. This predates the Soviet Union. So there's no free media, so people have been consuming stories about the Nazis in Ukraine and all of that, and it is there's a lot there, and but I think that probably most people in Russia don't particularly want the war. My personal intuition, but hey, the country is doing the thing, so I guess now we have to do the thing. And people get on board. And if you're a soldier and your commander says you go, then you go, and you don't mega question it. I mean, there's other examples of that. I mean, I don't want to. We're already, I guess, quite political, but I mean, the U.S. has been like, why did the Americans go to Vietnam?
Totally.
And what did the average soldier understand about the geopolitical aspects of it and all of that? Hey, now there's a war. Okay,
totally.
Let's go.
No, dumbass decision. I mean, in hindsight, I think it's largely looked on as like a giant fucking mistake and something that Nixon did for his own ego. And some of the stuff that was like publicly leaked with the conversations he had was like, I mean, it's a shameful act as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know many people who have any other opinions on that other than that. I mean, it's clearly, overtly, undisputably a failure politically. And
I mean, in terms of the Russia war, I know very little about the Vietnam War, so I might get flamed for my lack of history knowledge and all of that. But I mean, if you look at the current situation, I mean, it's very clear that the Russians expected this to be a quick military operation. We go in, rush to the capital, kill the president. They had a political system prepared of people that would step into power, and then you call an election, and then you rig the election, and then everything is good. And I think that was the plan, and they believed their own bullshit that there won't be so much resistance. It's just a couple of Nazis and this and that, and they will all fold in, and they're all just Russians anyway. And
yeah. I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, given that was what their incentives were.
So but now they're stuck, right? Now they're pot committed, and the cognitive dissonance works in the way that, hey, I did a bunch of stuff, must have been for good cause.
Dude.
Yeah, right. I invaded this country and I shot some people, so I guess I must have had some reasons. And or the reason, there was Nazis. Yeah, there was Nazis. That's why I did it. And then you kind of...
Yeah, 100%. I think the answer here is like, offer them the golden bridge to retreat. Make it a good package and really compelling, so you can allow the Russian leadership to save face.
I don't know.
No one wants a world war, so you optimize and say, no, we don't want a world war with nuclear missiles.
We already have a world war. Yeah, let's just acknowledge it. There is already a world war.
Well, there is not currently nuclear missiles.
We can win it. I don't think there would be. Yeah, I don't think there would be.
Well,
why would they? They're not suicidal.
There's not currently, but there has been. I mean, we've had world wars where people have dropped them, and I think, why flirt with that outcome? Why even get close to that fence? It's like, at least that's my view on it.
Because otherwise, that means that whoever has nuclear weapons can do whatever they want forever. And is that the world that we want to live in? So I don't know. But, I mean, it's not a great news for nuclear non-proliferation. This whole thing, if people have this attitude.
I think the psychology of the psychology of the country that would use a nuclear weapon is one of desperation. And so I think a strategy from the opposing side should be resistance, but clearly not a takeover or complete domination. I think it's almost like two magnets.
Well, I don't think takeover is needed. I don't think anyone is suggesting to invade Russia, not even Ukraine, really. So I don't know. I mean, I think that the trajectory of this is that Russia will implode as a country.
The sanctions have to be tough, right? I mean, God, the whole world stopped trading with Russia outside of China and a couple other Middle Eastern countries, and it's like that's got to be. I don't know if you have friends that live there or what, but I just imagine people are experiencing massive shortages and at least some supplies or currency volatility. Yeah. So anyways, glory.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Back
topic.
to Bitcoin stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how it does.
That was contrarian thoughts about benefits.
I don't know. I don't know if there's, I think a lot of people, I think these conversations are great. I certainly try to normalize political conversations. My disposition is to be open-minded and curious as to what other people's opinions have that are different than mine, and explore why they believe those, what grounds do they have to believe them. I think the more people shy away from hard conversations, the more those topics tend to grow and become, so large that they're out of control. So thank you, Sergej, for indulging me and going into the Ukraine, Russia conversation. And it was beautiful how it parlayed between Bitcoin and world currencies, which, translate back to what we're working on a day to day. It is also, I'll say this, I find it personally very meaningful to know that what you're working on has an impact in the bigger picture. That, okay, yeah, you do gift cards and Bitcoin transactions, but that's interwoven into the fabric and society of the entire world. It's like, it may not feel that, when you're solving some stupid bug on the front web page or something, but it ultimately it's an actor in the big picture. And that's why I love the space.
I mean, if I can, we were just, some of us were at the Oslo Freedom Forum 2 weeks ago. It's not a conference about Bitcoin. There were some Bitcoiners there and so on, but it's a conference for and about people that actually put their neck on the line for freedom. Literally. There's past attendees that are in jail, or some are dead. And it's very humbling to sort of to realize that our internet money hobby that we're doing for nerdy reasons for some years, in some small part is helpful to some of these people and organizations. And it's refreshing to see. I think is that we should try to embrace that more within the community. I think we've gotten so deep into this. It's an investment,
right?
It's great.
Totally.
It is all of that, but like, it's also a tool for freedom in the world. And there is, I just imagine a world in which it becomes seen that, Bitcoiners are a group that, there's a lot of wealth and they fund freedom in the world and also provide functionality for that freedom to happen. And how amazing would that be if we achieved that?
Yeah, it's headed in that direction. And it's not going to be a single day that it happens, but it's things like El Salvador adopting it as a national currency. It's things like large companies purchasing Bitcoin as part of their asset holdings. It's the culmination of all the conversations that are happening in the collective zeitgeist awareness. So I think it's just bubbling, man. It's not slowing down. That is for sure. Prices go up and down, but overall the proliferation of the ideology, the concept, it's definitely marching forward. Well, keep doing what you're doing, Sergej. Are you active personally? Are you writing, tweeting, anything you want to throw out there? We'll have links for all the company stuff in the show notes, but anything on your personal side?
Yeah, well, you can link to my personal Twitter as well.
Cool.
I'm active.
Nice.
You can DM me if you think I'm full of shit or whatever. It will definitely be read. So yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
Didn't expect us to go into this direction, but it was a fun conversation.
Sweet.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. And hope to have you back on someday. Keep doing your thing.
Thank you.
Bye.